Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, the idea of work isn't quite the same as it was a few years ago, is it?
I guess not.
Things have kind of changed a little bit.
Because of that pandemic thing that happened?
You mean the thing that this should not be named?
That goes unnamed from now on.
Voldemort the pandemic?
Yeah, right.
As we've started referring to it. And obviously things are likely never to be quite the same again when it comes to labor and working and all that. Yeah. So that's kind of what we're going to explore today. We're going to dive into a little bit of in particular, the labor crisis. Because we've heard a lot about this in a lot of different industries. A lot of people that are dealing with trying to figure out like, hey, we know people, we need people to work, but they don't want to work these jobs. We're struggling with getting enough people in, enough staff. I'll give you a little analogy. My wife and I were just on a little weekend trip over the last weekend, and we stopped off one morning for a breakfast buffet, and they had a sign up there that basically said, we're a little bit understaffed right now. Please be kind to the people that actually chose to show up for work today.
Well, that's good. Yes. I think that's where we're all at.
That's a positive attitude,
right?
I completely agree.
Absolutely.
Yes. Be kind.
Extra tip to those that show up.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have Honeywell's Kelley Wood on with us today. She's going to help us talk a little bit about why industries are struggling despite some job numbers that are improving. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we'll talk about what's changing worker expectations right now. Is the generational divide playing a part in this? And also maybe she'll help us do a little prognosticating and think about what might be coming in the future. I use one of my $10 words.
That's a $10 word for sure. Yes, absolutely.
All that plus our usual value to the VAR and what's TEConnecting with us. It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, as I mentioned today, our guest is Kelley Wood. She is the Senior Global Customer Marketing Manager for Honeywell.
Yep.
Kelley, thanks so much for joining us on the show. We appreciate having you today. Tell us a little bit more about your day-to-day role at Honeywell and what you've been up to maybe over the last couple of years yourself.
All right. Well, guys, thanks so much for having me. Great to be here. It's always a pleasure talking with you. So I'm part of the Productivity Services and Solutions team at Honeywell. And as you mentioned, I'm in customer marketing, and I focus primarily on the distribution center and warehouse space. What does that mean? What do I do? Well, one of the key things of my job is really to do a deep dive and focusing on what is happening in our industry. What are the pain points? What are those business challenges that operators are dealing with face-to-face and helping identify solutions and working with our internal team to come up with some solutions for that. And what I love about our business and any business is that there's no one answer for anything because everybody's situation is so unique, whether it's the building, location, the staff, the industry, whatever it is. So there is never a boring day at my job. Always opportunity for something else.
Yeah.
I like the attitude of there's never one answer or one solution. I think it should be kind of a motto for our reseller channel in general.
Yes.
Like,
right.
We preach that all the time. There's not typically one solution that works in every single situation.
That's
you got to
true.
be a little
This
flexible there.
Well, yeah.
So I like that
That's what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also
we
obviously
don't really want the solution either. Nobody wants the same thing that everybody else has.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Exactly.
It's like, how do you make it right for me? How do you make whatever you're selling perfect for me?
That's
right.
right.
Yeah, we're not a one-size-fits-all society
No.
anymore. Well, I'm glad you also mentioned that you do a lot of work like on the distribution, warehousing, supply chain side, because I feel like that's obviously one place where this labor crisis is really impacted, maybe more than almost any other type of industry.
Yep.
So let's get into this a little bit, and let's talk about, first of all, job reports. And, the last few months, the job reports have actually been pretty solid. July in particular was a huge month. We got basically, I think, back to where we were at pre-pandemic levels. The last couple months maybe haven't been quite as much growth as was expected, but still steady, good growth. So we're seeing a lot of good growth when it comes to jobs, lowering unemployment rates, but we still know that labor is an issue in a lot of industries though. So, what are you seeing and what types of businesses in particular, maybe in the distribution supply chain side or elsewhere that are still struggling right now? What's going on out there, Kelley?
Well, from what I'm seeing and my research as well, it looks like there's still two industries that are struggling the most. One, our warehouse and distribution. And the second one is the hospitality and leisure industry. They're still struggling. And you just mentioned it, John, in your opening, like that you went to a restaurant the other day and it was please be kind. I mean, that's more the norm than not right now. of seeing some kind of sign, or even going into a convenience store and seeing on the self-serve order, sorry, supply chain issues, don't have your products. So I think that, that's the two locations that I'm seeing. I know that, a lot of companies, there has been some cautious hiring now with things that are going on with the economy. And, so there's maybe a little bit of a dip in there. But I didn't even realize, I was really kind of to think when I was thinking about this, and have been over, I guess, the past 2 years or so, just looking how the business has changed. And we talk about, why are we still struggling? Now, I'm not saying that this is the end all be all answer, right? But we have a lot more jobs in this industry than we ever had before, especially when we had people that were opening up distribution centers closer to be able to serve the customers faster. We have more diverse type of delivery methods that are being implemented, from drivers needed to go from distribution to store, to people getting from the store to door for the customers. There's just a lot of switches. Even our grocery stores, you think about them, they've become mini distribution centers where orders are being picked for customers. So there's just more types of jobs that we have, and we don't have the people to necessarily do it. We've had a lot of attrition through that, which not should be named. Through COVID, we had people that have retired. We unfortunately lost people to COVID. And so we're having to attract a brand new workforce to want to come into an industry that hasn't always had a nice shiny spotlight on it.
Yeah. And when you look at the macro, of what's going on, or what has been going on, I'll give you a little bit, because I've got the U.S. Chamber site opened up here. Really kind of fascinating to look at the overall what happened during the pandemic. You saw that occur, but I'll give you this. Overall, in 2021, so going back a year, employers ended up adding an unprecedented 3.8 million jobs. So, right? I mean, there was that huge dip during the pandemic, kind of made it back up. But here's interesting. But at the same time, millions of Americans left the labor force since the pandemic. In fact, we have more than 3 million fewer Americans participating in the labor force today compared to February of 2020. So, I mean, when you think about that, so we buoyed the ship, but then you've got 3 million less workers.
You got to make it up somewhere.
That's going to manifest itself in a lot of different areas, right? I mean, hospitality, retail, clearly one of them. Warehousing, clearly an area too. But really, really fascinating. I think we'll get into some of the whys. But when you look at that aggregate number, man, that's just really compelling, right?
Definitely is. Well, I think both, these industries we're talking about here are ones that even pre-pandemic, we were doing a lot of asking them to do more with less. Yeah. There was a lot of like, hey, faster, harder work, more work. We as consumers want everything fast and quick and easy. That was happening long before the pandemic anyway. And so, there was already that kind of compounding issue happening. And then suddenly on top of it, then you have, again, a lot fewer people either in the workforce doing these particular jobs or want to be in these particular jobs. It's kind of a bit of a recipe for disaster there. And that's right. And I think that's what's making it so much harder to level that playing field for some of these industries, even when things are bouncing back and we're, in a sense of somewhat normalcy, by comparison to where we were 2 years ago, for sure.
But it's going to be interesting to see, because Kelley, as you pointed out on the warehousing side, I agree with you. There was obviously during the height of the pandemic, there was so much around warehousing, last mile logistics, getting stuff delivered. But you're starting to see the data that's starting to cool off a little bit, and people are going back to retail, back to some traditional brick and mortar, as we have talked about. So what impact is that going to have? Those warehousing jobs that were out there, there's still, you can't find warehousing space right now. So let's just put that on the table, right? You cannot, if you are a warehouse operator on the West Coast somewhere and you have space, that's an anomaly, because there's all the warehouses.
You're missing out on a lot of money, for one thing.
Everything from like Vegas West is like packed with whatever kind of a thing. So, but clearly that's going to have to shift, right? Because that's not sustainable. You can't have where we're at with warehousing capacity. So it'll be really interesting to see, this pendulum that swings normally in the ebb and flow of business. To me, it's like it's happening a lot faster.
It's pretty chaotic right now.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right, well then, Kelley, let's get into some of the whys here. Let's talk about where we are. And obviously, this can be a very subjective topic as far as like, why people aren't working certain jobs or why they dropped out of the workforce, et cetera. But but let's get into the obviously the pandemic had a lot to do with that. But let's talk about the beyond the obvious layoffs. Like, okay, people got laid off again. Like I said, we've rebounded a lot from that. But to your point, Dean, you've had over 3.8 million, something like that. Yeah. Like people that have just flat out dropped out of the workforce and just aren't working at all. So how has the past couple of years redefined the worker and redefined their expectations about jobs, and maybe why they are declining to just be part of the workforce or staying away from certain types of jobs? What are you seeing out there as far as expectations go?
That's like a loaded question there. All right. So I think there's a couple things. One, when we were all in the lockdown situation, there was an opportunity for people to reassess what actually was important and what's not important. I know I personally was furloughed from my prior employer because of, and I found that I did not have a huge financial impact on the fact that that happened, because all of a sudden the conveniences, the things that I thought I needed and those sorts of things were not. The gas wasn't getting put in the car twice a week. The taking out due to convenience wasn't necessary. There were a lot of things that kind of balanced out. So there might have been a level setting of, hey, we might be able to save money by having either, it's a family or something like that, or rethinking about how to do it. Another thing is, if you look at across industries, wages have certainly become competitive. I mean, there is a fast casual burger place offering $18 an hour with a $500 signing bonus. Well, let me see. Do I want to go work an 8-hour shift flipping burgers or lifting 50-pound cases? Where is that? And even when you're looking at, I think that the warehousing and travel and leisure kind of have you pulling from a similar select prop of the workforce. You're pulling in from the same sort of the workforce of looking at what is the value and what am I getting. Even those restaurants and businesses are starting to add additional benefits to come and work with them where it wasn't before, where benefits are now like healthcare and things like that are now being offered, or paid days off are being offered. So it's become a little bit more competitive that way as well. And then the world has changed. People have gotten really innovative. I mean, one of my favorite statistics that I use is like in simply 2 years, the majority of the population, global population, is going to be made up of millennials. That is a different type of generation that uses technology, that uses, that are entrepreneurial, that sort of thing. So people really got creative during that time. Now, is that sustainable? Don't know. I think that the next probably 6 months or so, or next 6 to 12 months, are going to be really interesting. Again, as you said, John, looking at how things normalize to see where business goes back to. I mean, look at what some of the big department stores are doing right now. They brought in so much inventory and now they're doing mad clearance sales just to do it, because it was, instead of just in time, it was just in case. And now they're paying for it.
I'll throw on the table some interesting statistics, when you get into the why, right? Why are we here? And we all heard about, some of the subsidies that were happening, the enhanced unemployment benefits that were happening through 2021 as a reason why, so many people didn't get back into the labor force. But a chamber survey recently cited that 28% of women cited others in the family making enough money that working full-time is not as critical as a reason, and they have not re-entered the workforce because of that, right? So when you have 30% of women saying that, or 17% of men said the exact same thing, by the way. So, higher incomes and those types of earning houses aren't seeing the need to get back. And so that's contributing to that gap, I think, right? Yeah. We talked a little bit about early retirements. Yes, you're right on the millennial Gen Z side, but also let's not forget about all those baby boomers that are retiring, getting out, wanting to get out. Those types of things is having a dramatic effect. You and I are sandwiched in the middle. We're just we
don't know if we're ever going to retire. Let's be honest.
Lack of access to childcare, right? Because during the pandemic, I mean that's a big one, right, Kelley? I mean,
absolutely. And I'll tell you, I mean, I'm fortunate. I have 2 teenagers now, so childcare isn't an issue. But when I had to put them in daycare, I was looking at $1,000 a week. That's a lot of money. And whenever you do it almost because it's a habit, right? I'm working, I have to do it. So we gotten before the pandemic into this, just keep moving forward as we always do, not taking that step back. Well, it forced a lot of people to take a step back and make changes.
I'll throw one more out there. New business starts. This is a good one, right? So the entrepreneurial spirit has not gone away during the pandemic. And in fact, in the last 2 years, nearly 10 million new business applicants were filed. So that's a lot of new business. And those are people that were maybe employed somewhere else, typically, and not showing up in the unemployment reels, but because they're business owners now, you know, and that gets into that whole kind of maybe shift, or a lot of that went over to some of it went over to the entrepreneurial spirit. So
Well, and you look at companies like Amazon and places like that make it very easy for fulfillment of those types of businesses. It made it very simple. I mean, I'm in marketing, guys. Like advertising used to be the way you go. You work with an agency, you place ads, you do that. That's not the case anymore. You need influencers. You got to get someone to go talk about your product on TikTok, and next thing you know, they're selling out brands. They're selling them out, and it's like causing disruption in supply chain. You can't get the product. They don't have enough of whatever they need components to make the things.
Isn't that crazy?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's just it's a different world. Right
Oh, it
there.
is. Yeah, it's again a world we've kind of aged out of a little bit. But
I don't know that I'm influenced by an influencer. Maybe I am. I don't know.
Yeah,
you know, I'm not going out there buying.
Well, the influencers aren't aiming for us. We're not the target demographic at this point either.
They're 100% not.
You might be influenced. You don't even know it. That's when you have a good influencer.
That's right.
Go. Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Well, Kelley, you made a great point, I think, there a moment ago, too, about the idea of the things we do out of habit. You know, we paid for childcare out of habit. We, you know, didn't spend as much time with our families out of habit. We ate out more out of habit, you know, because of it's the learned habit that we had because, you know, and we've talked about this on the show before, you know, we've kind of been trained to evolve our lives around work in a way. And I think the idea of work-life balance changed quite a bit. And again, we've had a few episodes about this along the way too.
For sure.
Changed a lot over the last few years. And a lot of folks, when, you know, whether it was because their working situation changed where they weren't working anymore, or they, you know, had time to reevaluate, you know, and realize like, hey, I kind of like being home with my family and seeing my kids more than a couple hours a day, you know, and spending time doing things that I enjoy and having, you know, more leisure time. Or, you know, the folks that got to start working from home, hey, I enjoy the 2 hours I'm no longer wasting commuting anymore or something like that. Right. So I think a lot of that stuff.
Quit talk. That's the hashtag
talk,
apparently that went viral, right? About people quitting their jobs because they wanted more free time, better opportunities.
Exactly. That's I think that's a big part of it too. Is, you know, again, like we've broken a little bit of the attitude and the cycle of, you know, live to work and turning a little more into the work to live side. Like, okay, I know I need to have a job to do the things that I want to do, but can I look for the kind of job that lets me have the flexibility to do the things that I want to do?
Yeah.
And I think there's a big, that divide kind of started growing a bit more, and people started peeking a little more behind the curtain and realizing, man, things could be different.
The official word or phrase that what you're looking for is the Great Reshuffle. So it was the Great Resignation. Now it's the Great Reshuffle. Just to give you a stat, 4.4 million people quit their jobs in May of 2022 alone, right? So there's reshuffling going on. Yeah. And I don't know that equates into the warehouse worker or whatnot. That's just an aggregate number, but clearly that's going on.
Well, I think it could. And I think both to what you were just saying, you're right. Things started mattering. So when you talk about what's important to people now and what they're looking for in a job, and even within the warehouse and DC space, that some of these expectations, especially from the incoming generation, they're in there, right? So with the millennials, the Gen Zs, how many of you've had purpose? I want a job that has purpose. I want to know what I'm doing and what's the impact it has. The impact it has on the community, the impact it has on my personal life, the impact it has on whatever this business is trying to accomplish. Tell me what I'm doing, because purpose and joy are two things right now. And it's not everybody walking around, skipping around being happy. It's just, for the most part, people want to feel satisfied and happy with what they're doing. And they've realized, again, during that downtime, the stress that they had doing things that weren't productive or giving them, was it worth it?
Definitely.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, then let's get a little further into all the generational divide here. And we had an episode back in our first year about the generational divide in the workplace and how that was affecting the way people work together, when you had boomers all the way down to Gen Z, you know, and I hate to see, we're probably not too far away from Gen Alpha entering the workforce, you know, like I'm not sure how far they off they are. No. My son's already saying he wants to be a teenager. He heard about one of his teenage cousins getting a job, and he's just like, I want to get a job. I'm like, that would be awesome, but you got a little while to wait. You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, let's talk about that when you these workforces coming together, and again, you've got an older workforce that is you know, slowly starting to retire. You've got the younger workforce that have different perspectives about work, and certainly things have probably changed a lot for them over the last, several years, or even just the last decade in general. So, what else is going on with the generational gap right now? How is that affecting this labor issue?
Well, this might sound crazy, but I think it's exciting times. I think out of disruption and chaos could come some really wonderful innovation and change. And let's face it, our business has been pretty stagnant for a while, and there's a lot of businesses out there that are still doing old traditional methods with good old pen and paper and Excel sheets with maintaining inventory. But where we are with the millennials and with the Zs, when we're looking at it, now we have a group of people that have been born and raised on technology. They expect technology to be a part of what they're doing. And the technology is going to be something that is going to enhance performance, productivity, the business overall. There's going to be more openness and willingness to have that. Now, as for the older generation, the boomers and the X, and I'm an X, so I'm allowed to call myself older too. We have adopted, guys, think about it. The money, we only used to go to a bank, and now we have a Mac machine, and now we're walking around with a computer in our hand attached to us at all times, where we're shopping, we're banking, we're doing everything, communicating on it, right? Things that we never did 10 years ago. I think that there's a bigger acceptance for that type of technology, where there's the opportunity of the merging of the two is kind of doing that cross mentorship. One, it's for the leadership of the teams to really, number one, extract and lean on the folks that have been in the industry for years to get all of that great information that they've acquired through the years. And second, it's when we have bringing people into it, really tapping into their expertise. Yes, they could come in and they could do the jobs, they could pick, they could receive, they could do that sort of thing, but really leaning on them for process improvement and figuring out how they could look at things differently instead of how we always done it. So I think it's exciting times. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's a great opportunity. And then if we even look at how we're going, and stop me at any time, getting on a little roll here. Even if we look at just over the past 2 years, how technology has evolved. A little over 2 years ago, robots were like, I don't know, maybe. And now that's part of people's plans on investing in them and bringing them in. Not so much to replace people, but to augment the worker. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, and right there on that one, we've talked about it a lot. Physical automation, especially in our space, is it's like, is it coming? It's like this thing that everybody sees on the horizon. It's like it's going to have an impact, right? And you're starting to see small impacts of that, but it's so automation, and then you have virtual automation, which is through data manipulation and things of that nature, and being able to automate processes and stuff like that through those types of RPAs and things of that nature. So it really is fascinating to see some of that. Not to mention the global trends of labor and how manufacturing and other things have really kind of offshored to other areas, and that all compounds it. But so, then what I think about is the service industry, right? You hear a lot about, well, it's all service driven. Our economy is flipped. It used to be labor, now it's all services type. So when you think it, and when I interact with millennials and Gen Zs, it's mostly in the service industry, like software. Like they're all, they're selling us on a SaaS, or they're account reps on a software. It's all service oriented type of a thing, and that's really it's just my little world that I live in. But really, really fascinating to see how that has impact. So you're right, Kelley. There have been some shifts. Shift isn't even a right word, like some fractal changes in some aspects of our society.
Yeah. Let's be honest. This stuff it's always the game changer. There's always a younger, newer generation that sees the opportunity to take on new processes and new technology and new ideas. We did it when we were young, I'm sure when we Gen Xers were young.
It was just like Industry 1.0 back when the steam engine came around, and it's like, oh, what is that thing?
Exactly.
John Henry.
One of my favorite gags or stories, honestly, I learned about this from Star Trek VI of all places, is the story of I can't. It was a Scandinavian country. I can't remember which one it was. Basically, where a new form of weaving, I think, or whatever, or maybe it was the loom or whatever, was introduced into manufacturing for clothing. Some of the workers revolted. They were like, "No, how dare you bring this thing in? You're trying to replace us, replace humans and our work."
Sabotage the device.
Okay, you know where that word sabotage came from? Oh? The shoes that the workers wore. They wore wooden shoes called sabots, and they threw their shoes into the machines to wreck them and grind up the gears. And that was where sabotage came from.
I did not know that. Yeah,
believe it or
not, come on.
Yeah, I learned that from Star Trek. So who says
I just fed you right into that?
You did. You totally did. Yeah. So that's where the term came from.
You would think that was scripted, but that was not scripted. Yes.
So the younger generations, they aren't throwing their shoes into the gears of things right now necessarily, or the older folks. I guess.
No, but they're reacting.
The other side
right?
of it.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of thing. This happens time and again, generation after generation. An older generation that sits there and goes, "We've always done it this way, and we're always going to do it this way." The younger generation goes, "No, we're not. Sorry, because one day you're not going to be here anymore, and it's going to be us that are in charge. So we want to start doing it our way." Yeah. And I think it's just where we are now. It's that gap and that divide's happening. And to your point and Kelly's point too, the technology that's starting to enable these processes and make things easier and automation. Again, it's a whole two generations that have essentially grown up with this stuff in their hands at all times. And even us, we're very comfortable with this stuff. We remember the divide. We remember pre automation and technology to now. But I don't think too many of us are looking at it either and saying like, no, we don't want to do this. So there's just no reason for for that not to happen, that progression to happen. And they're going to push it forward. And eventually, we're just going to get pushed out of the way. Those of us that don't want it.
Well, it'll be services that just push us out of the way.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, like it or not. And I know that can be rough for some folks. Sometimes I look at my mom, for instance. I feel bad for her. She's 71 and she's way behind on everything. Like she will never grasp the internet. She will never be able to handle any of that
We'll
stuff.
never take an Uber.
No, yeah, exactly. Right? Just never. And it's fine. It's it's okay, and like I help her out where I can with this stuff. But like it happens. It's just the natural cycle of things. Either you keep up or eventually you're going to get left behind.
Another thing that we have to our advantage right now is what came out of the pandemic is we got a nice shiny spotlight on supply chain. Where before we were just like, the behind the scenes, the dirty word, whatever, nobody really took to it. Now, even though there might be things that are disruptive and not pleasant with it, people are looking at it. People understand it. I mean, I have a son right now looking to go to college, and I could tell you several of the schools were pushing supply chain management and saying, this is a great opportunity. If you're going to go in for business, take this as your focus because the jobs are there. There is the opportunity for it. And so, I mean, that's an advantage for us, especially if you have people that are fixers. And that's one of the traits of millennials. They like to solve things. So that could work to our advantage too, of coming in and identifying new ways of doing things.
And that's a great point, though, because if you think about it, like if you did one of those whole word cloud things about words and phrases that appeared in, media and discussions in print over the last few years, obviously COVID and pandemic are probably at the top, but I guarantee you probably in the top 10, something about like supply chain is going to be in there somewhere, just for the amount of, to your point, we just didn't, you didn't think about it. It was out there, but it operated very much behind the scenes. You just knew that if you ordered something or needed something or somebody needed something, it got to them somehow. There's probably a truck out on the road delivering it to them. There's people that were putting it together, but you just didn't think that hard about it. And now we're all hyper aware of it, and we're all very keen on understanding what it is, what's going on, and how's it going to affect me if something's wrong now. So.
That's right. Yeah.
The fact that I was and I mentioned a little bit earlier, whenever I went into a convenience store and it was you place your own order, and it had a piece of paper due to supply chain issues. We're out of a few products. When in the past would you ever see supply chain? It would just be out of stock. It would not have a reason, but like to see that written in a gas station due to supply chain issues. So it's part of people's vocabulary today.
Yeah, some might be taking advantage of that a little bit. It was actually the clerk who forgot to order it, but we're just going to chalk that up to supply chain. Yeah, there's still a gas fee.
Hastily typed up printed message.
Yeah.
Great point. All right. Well, hey, let's wrap this up by talking about, maybe the future a little bit. And, so Kelley, I'm curious from your point of view, do you see this crisis resolving anytime soon? Are we kind of looking at this labor crisis lasting for a while longer? Is there going to have to be some big changes to make this change? And do you have any kind of other predictions for the the future of labor and what workers and employees should expect and should be doing?
I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier on, I think it's going to take a little yet for things to normalize. And I think that the dust is going to settle and people are going to reassess. So from a warehouse DC perspective, I think people were being ultra aggressive with investments and focusing on how am I going to, in automation and looking at specific things they're going to do. And now that things are starting to cool off a little, it'll be interesting to see where investments, if it continues down the path of automation or if it looks, if it pulls off and it goes a different way. Futuristically, again, I think that we have a lot of great things that are going to come as an output of this. It might be painful now, but I think that we are going to find some, we'll call it harmony, of finding that right balance of being able to meet those customer needs and create a work environment that people want to be a part of, because it's not going to be just fully from the neck down. People are going to evolve from, I just need you to come pick product, put it on the conveyor belt or whatever it is, pick these orders, to people seeing a career path. That's me looking into my crystal ball where I'm seeing it. So I think that we might have more of a draw, and someone's going to come up with some really great technology of really making it easier. There's a lot of great stuff out there now, whether it's for just, equipping your workers that you have today to make them successful and make their job easier, to things that they're going to get to work alongside.
Labor is always going to be needed. Yeah. I don't know that goes away. Whether and if we're bringing some of that labor, trying to bring it back, right. Obviously inflation is actually going to help that. I know that sounds weird, but it will, because the overall salaries and wages will rise. Mm-hmm. But which was the disproportionate thing that got kind of part of what got us in this situation to begin with. So anyway, it will be interesting to see. I don't know. It is going to be fascinating to see how automation plays into it, where this all nets out. But I'm hopeful as well that you'll see that, because when you think about it and how life used to be, a labor was a great way of entering the workforce and then building skills and then moving on. Beyond that. And so when you don't have a lot of that, where is the shift going? Is it in the services where that's where your breeding ground or your stepping stones are there? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it all kind of pans out. But
I agree. Definitely. There's a lot of unknowns, I think, still in this entire conversation.
Quite a few.
Come next? Something else I was going to mention. I meant to bring this up during our talk about the generational divide too. Is I'm very curious because and Kelley, you mentioned this when you were talking about like supply chain management courses in colleges. I'm very curious about how education is going to start evolving wrapped around this as well, because
it needs to.
Well, exactly. Because you're hearing a lot of stuff about, obviously students struggled quite a bit, during the pandemic because everything happened there. And a lot of people are, just like jobs, a lot of people are reevaluating schooling and education. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we also have, an entire generation, and the millennials and Gen Zs have started feeling this too, who kind of got sold a bit of a bill of goods when it came to education of like, hey, let's, put yourself into debt for potentially 20, 30, maybe even most of your life, to get an education and get a degree that, all things considered, may not have actually really been really mattered.
Yep.
Like it may have been something that got you a job because no one would interview you without it, but it didn't necessarily have anything to do with the skills that you really needed to do that job well necessarily.
Yeah, you were checking a box.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I went to college. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's always a lot of discussion around that and around education. We've obviously had big discussions lately about student debt forgiveness, and I think there's going to be a lot of people, a lot of younger folks that have to really think about what they're going to do when it's their time to decide: do I go to college? Do I go to the workforce? What does it mean to go to college? What am I really getting out of it? So I'm very curious to see how that falls into it too, because I feel like once we kind of sort out what the new normal of work looks like, I have a feeling there's going to be a huge impact that trickles down into education as well, because you can't just again, that box checking, I don't think is going to cut it for a lot of people. Give us $80,000 to come to to this school so you can check a box and say you got a degree that you will probably use, if you're lucky, maybe 30% of what you learned ever again.
Well, John, that's going to change though from employers, because degrees have become a check the box too.
That's a good point.
You cannot apply if you do not have a 4-year degree and you haven't made that investment.
Yep.
Right.
So that has to be an employer to a business type focus. And, those colleges and universities, I've worked with them for 10 years, and I'll tell you, they've had a struggle back then, and it's even more so now, especially since if you have more people moving into the software, the technology type of industries, they can go online and get a certificate in 6 months for, a quarter, if not less, and come out making more than they would and be highly desirable. So
I think we should start a TEConnect vocational school. That's where I was going to go. I think it's the prime
you just had your aha moment here, Dean. There's your aha moment.
As long as we don't get ourselves in the trouble that a lot of these for-profit schools have been getting into lately. Let's make sure we are doing it properly. We're just not out to just get a bunch of money and give worthless degrees out.
Yes, let's not do that. Yeah, I would agree with that 100%.
That's backfired on a lot of places lately. So, all right. Well, hey, before we wrap things up here, and also tell the VARs how they can kind of get in on this whole thing. We've been very generalized in this conversation, but we've touched on a lot of the stuff that affects our VARs and the businesses they work with.
Sure.
We want to tell them maybe a little bit about how they can help. I don't want to say capitalize on the labor crisis, but help
understand it and
help their customers with solutions for it. Exactly.
For sure.
Before we do that, though, we want to, as always, thank our TEConnect program members and the podcast sponsors. Of course, Honeywell is one of those program sponsors. We appreciate them supporting our program and our show, and for lending us someone like Kelley to talk to us today about this particular issue. As always, if you like the show, you need to tell us. It's not just enough for you to just sit there and go like, yeah, I like these guys. No. Do something with it, please. And we're asking for just a couple minutes of your time.
We had a recent guy that emailed us and lots of praise, which is awesome, which is good, but a lot of value that he's seeing out of it as well.
He very much
as a new player in the channel.
Yep. New to the channel. His name is Danny. Yep. You will be hearing from him or hearing more about him in the future because the topic he threw out of us was a really good one. I think that we're going to run with.
And he gets a shirt.
Yes, and he already did. Already sent the thing to get the T-shirt. Yeah. So, all right. So, bottom line, what I'm saying here is, yes, let us know if you like the show. Like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Leave us a comment. If you listen on an audio platform, if there's any way to give a rating and review, please do that. And to Dean's point, yes, if you have ideas for the show, things you want to hear us talk about, suggestions for what you think might be a good topic to dive into. If you heard about this labor crisis episode and thought, hey, I want to go a little bit further, drill into this particular part of that conversation, tell us, and we will be happy to
dive in
and do some research, ask you questions about what you want to hear about. But the only way we know that is if you tell us. So every episode, if you go to the show notes, whether you're on YouTube, podcast of your choice, there is always going to be a link there where you can submit your ideas for the show. So just go click on that link, and we will, we'll, again, to Dean's point, we'll send you a T-shirt just for submitting an idea. That's all you have to do. Submit an idea, and we will send you a TEConnect podcast T-shirt just for doing that.
There you go.
But also, if you want to stay in touch with us and keep up with what we're doing, you can always find us on Twitter at TEConnectPod. You can also email us, TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, let's wrap up as always. First of all, with the value to the VAR.
Yes.
It's kind of our way of wrapping up the episode and giving a little takeaway for our audience. And again, I wanted to give them something that they can maybe do around this whole labor crisis issue. So let's ask about this. Kelley, when pitching solutions that are designed to solve some of these labor issues, how do we ensure that we're still being sensitive to the human element side of things here? And it's not just about replacing, as you mentioned earlier.
I think that when you're pitching, some solutions designed to help address the labor issues, really anything about it is to help make things better for it. It makes the job easier. It makes the worker excel at whatever they're doing. So it's not to be positioned as something that is a replacement, but more of something that augments the work that they're doing. And it's just going to make it better and help them grow, whether it's in the current role that they're in or when they move through and up through the organization.
And we've talked about that a lot, right? Whereas, when you go in with solutions that are, in theory, replacing some of that, it's not that it's replacing, it's augmenting it. I love where she's going with that because, those skills and those people, you can still use them. They have transferable skills. There are other areas within the business that they can have a meaningful, positive impact in. And that's where the good comes from, right? You're still doing that. And look, I think millennials and Gen Z certainly understand that they have to work with technology, right? It's not like this, this force that's coming after them. They understand it already. So it's actually encouraged to have that better work environment where I'm interacting with technology. Oh, you got this new thing you're adding? Okay, great, but I can still do this, whatever this is as it relates to the work, right?
Yeah, you guys hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I had written down as, the idea of replace and, or not replace, but augment, assist. And the other thing too is, just to what you mentioned, like the younger generations, they're familiar with this technology. They expect this technology.
Yep.
To me, a great way to pitch this stuff to your customers in supply chain, retail, hospitality, anywhere they're suffering these issues, is to tell them, like, look, this is not just about helping out with this current issue, but this is also about getting some of the best workers you can get in the future who want to work with this kind of technology, who expect this kind of technology. It's going to be a difference maker when they're out looking for jobs, and your company's the one that has all the newest, coolest, best technology in place to help make their work better, more productivity. All the neat stuff they want to see. Trust me, that stands out. Someone might say, you know what? I would rather work for you, maybe even a little less money, than this other guy who's going to give me a little more money, but has old, outdated, ridiculous processes that I simply cannot keep up with.
That's
I'm
right.
sorry.
Yeah.
So I think that can be a bit of a game changer there.
For sure.
So, all right, let's wrap up as always with our favorite segment, What's Tech Connecting with You? This is where we get to talk about something in the world of science, tech innovation that has got our attention, caught our eye. We'll let Kelley start here. What's Tech Connecting with you right now?
All right, I got to admit, and if there's anybody from my prior world when I worked in the food industry, especially chefs, don't be mad, but I am really interested in seeing how the role that robots are going to play in commercial kitchens. I fully believe that chefs are needed, and you need people in the kitchen. It's such a creative thing that a robot can't do. But just to see how it can offset the labor that's in there, help with managing costs, with food costs and everything, I'm just really curious. It's like kind of the merging of my worlds of career. So the food side and now the robotic side, and seeing where things happen. I know that McDonald's right now is using a robotic arm for making French fries. And you think about it, it's just somebody that's standing there and dumping fries, and it's a very monotonous process. So it's for that purposes. I'm not ready for a robot to bring me my food when I'm sitting there eating out. That still kind of gives me a little creeps because food's slowly coming by in a robot. I do like the ones that are enclosed delivering snacks on college campuses. But I think that's what I'm most curious to kind of see where that goes.
All right, Dean, what's Tech Connecting with you right now?
Right. So here is my headline here that jumped off the page. Hangover, leave, tops houseplant bereavement and job perks wish list.
Okay,
so I thought this was very timely to the conversation that we were having. Leave it up to, I think it's true. Well, I found this on Truist, where it's just, there was a survey that went out there, I guess, that ranks the kind of unusual job benefits that employees would like to see as employee offers. So when you have things like, here we go, breakup leave. Breakups happen, right? But 17% of respondents, roughly 44 million Americans, would choose breakup leave as a desired job perk. Not good enough?
I mean, to be fair, I've had some breakups that, pretty much put me out of commission for a while,
I got a couple more for you here. Social media detox day. Roughly 12% of the respondents, representing 31 million Americans, would choose social media detox day as a job perk. I can't believe it. Leave for heartsick sports fans. So if your team lost
we could have used that after the Super Bowl this year.
We could have, yes. Yeah. Would that have been a job perk for you? All right, just take the next day off.
I mean,
all
whatever.
Right. And
I
then
just
the
think
last
in general
one,
we should have the day off after the Super Bowl.
The last one that just had me scratching my head, house plant bereavement day. I think that we've just gone a little bit too far when that's even listed on a survey or even people respond to that. Don't you feel like, right? Like
that's
if you're saying I need bereavement because my house plant died.
Look, here's what I think about this. Like,
come on, man.
Like, everybody has reasons why they need time off, and that's fine. Then just call it a PTO bank. Let's just give people a bank of time off.
All right.
Mental health time. I don't care what it is. I don't care whether you're sick, whether you just need a day off, whether it's just a beautiful day and you don't feel like working, you want to go golfing that day. I don't care what the reason is.
I'm good with those.
Just take some PTO. Just take it. Just have a bank of it.
You don't need to tell us that it's because your plant died.
Exactly. I don't need the reasons. It doesn't matter. I don't think we need to define specific types of days that you're going to take off. We just need to tell people, like, hey, here's how much PTO time you have for the year. Take it whenever you need it, whenever you need it. We don't care.
All right, John, what's Tech Connecting?
All right, well, kind of sticking along a little bit of our theme here with robots too. Kelley just mentioned All right, well, Amazon done is once again scrapped another one of their kind of science projects, I guess, of sorts.
Really? Yes, okay.
I know we talked about like some of the self-store stuff or whatever kind of got scrapped. Yep. Well, now they've scrapped one called Home Delivery Robot Tests.
Okay.
So Scout Home Delivery. It was called Scout was the name of the program.
Yes, I remember that.
Basically, this was like with these little 6-wheeled vehicles that would roll down the sidewalk and deliver packages.
They're canceling it?
They're canceling. They're getting rid of this program. They're pretty much reallocating all the folks to other things. There's still discussions about maybe doing
Amazon's
something
reallocating a lot of things right now.
They are. And really, honestly, though, when I was reading about this and like what it all entailed, and as always, I'll have the link in the show notes to our TEConnecting here. This one in particular kind of stood out to me because, one, it doesn't deliver straight to your door. It's not like the whole drone delivery thing, which they've also more or less kind of
It's like
scrapped.
curbside to your curb?
Yeah, exactly. So like it's rolling up curbside. So you'd have to leave your house and go out and open up the robot, or punch in a code or something to get your item out of the robot. Plus, for at least during this testing phase and for who knows how long, someone had to follow along this thing the whole time too.
Oh, my Lord.
It's like, why don't you just put the package in that person's hands and let them bring it to me? Right. Problem solved. I didn't need the robot. I just need, and they could have walked it to my front door. So it seemed pretty silly anyway. It seemed like, let's just try this for the sake of trying this. So
I don't know. It feels like a step back, but I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's I hate to see innovation get scrapped, you know, when an interesting idea is obviously there. You know, but at the same time, you're kind of like, whatever. Like, you know, I don't know that anyone's losing out on anything right now.
That's fair.
Reallocate those jobs and reallocate that money somewhere else.
Your job's back. It's reverse automation. I don't know.
Exactly. All right, that's what's TEConnecting with us. It is time for us, unfortunately, to unplug. Big thanks to Kelley Wood for joining us on the show today from Honeywell.
Kelley.
We appreciate her insight.
Yep.
And until next time, you know, take some time off to bereave the bug you squashed out on the sidewalk.
And don't feel bad about it. Because you and 31 million other Americans would take that as a job perk.
Exactly. And as always, folks, please stay connected. The TEConnect podcast is brought to you by Honeywell. All right, Dean, we just talked all about combating labor shortages by equipping existing staff with the right tools to maximize productivity.
That's correct. Tools are important.
Well, Honeywell is backing up their expertise with their latest enterprise mobile computer, the CT30XP. Already a winner of the Red Dot Product Design and IF Design Awards.
Nice.
They're winning awards for this thing. It just came out.
Already? Yes.
That's pretty impressive.
And who doesn't want an award-winning tool to use at their job?
Just like who doesn't like listening to an award-winning podcast? Yeah, see how I did that there?
I love it.
The CT30XP combines the elegant design and usability of a high-end mobile phone without compromising the durability, manageability, or business functionality serious businesses depend on. Combined with Honeywell's powerful software such as operational intelligence, Smart Talk unified communications, and Smart Pay contactless payment, the CT30XP is an ideal platform on which users in retail, healthcare, and delivery can build effective solutions. Pretty
nice.
Robust start
Very
there.
much so, yeah.
Hang on, let's get into some of these specs here. They're even more impressive.
Shoot them.
5.5-inch FHD screen, slim, lightweight, yet durable. It even has a pleasing curved-edged aesthetic that makes it look like an upscale device for customer-facing, top-tier retail or hospitality venues.
So it's not like a janky, small screen, little,
Exactly. Look, if I'm going into a high-end store and they pull out some dirty, old, scratched-up, ancient-looking technology
with a little screen,
I might think that represents their quality of service as well. So,
not with this device.
Not with this device, no. Wi-Fi 6 options, Honeywell's Mobility Edge platform, flex range scan engine, enterprise software compatibility. The CT30XP has a lot to offer your customers. To learn more, check out the link in the show notes or contact your BlueStar Honeywell representative.